The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of light and shadow. For millennia, Jedi and Sith had mapped its currents, studied its mysteries, charted its dimensions. But what happens when something crashes through from a universe where the Force is called something else entirely, something ridiculous, and operates on principles no philosophy could predict? The first sign came as a distortion in hyperspace above Christophilis. Republic sensors registered it simultaneously with Separatist arrays, a massive spatial anomaly that bent light, twisted gravity, and sang with energy signatures that matched nothing in any database. On the crystalline planet's surface, clone troopers and battle droids alike paused mid-firefight, looking skyward as the blue-white atmosphere tore open like fabric. What emerged defied classification. Spaceball One breached into real space with all the grace of a banda falling down stairs. The vessel was enormous, city-sized, perhaps rivaling a Venator-class Star Destroyer in sheer mass, but its design spoke of engineering principles that made Republic shipwrights want to weep. Excessive. Unnecessary. The ship's hull bore ridiculous protrusions, inexplicable panels, and what appeared to be cosmetic racing stripes along flanks meant for void combat. Exhaust ports vented atmosphere in wasteful plumes. The bridge tower rose like a monument to compensating for something. And it was screaming. Not metaphorically. Actual screams echoed across all frequencies as Spaceball One's hull scraped reality itself, dimensional barriers shrieking their protest at this forced violation. Emergency thrusters fired in patterns that suggested panic rather than procedure. The massive vessel listed port, overcorrected starboard, then began a spiraling descent that would terminate somewhere in Christophilis' northern continent. On the bridge of the Republic attack cruiser Resolute, Admiral Wolf Yularen stared at his tactical display with the expression of a man who just discovered physics was taking a holiday. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, voice carefully neutral, "the unidentified vessel is." "I'm reading contradictory data. It's both there and not there." Sensors indicated simultaneously solid matter and some form of dimensional echo. "Life signs?" Yularen demanded. "Thousands, sir. All reading as human." "Maybe. The biosignatures keep fluctuating. It's like they're from our universe but also fundamentally aren't." Across the battlefield, aboard the Separatist dreadnought Invincible, tactical droids ran probability matrices that kept returning error codes. General Worm Loathsome, the Kirkoidan commander, watched the descending vessel with mounting suspicion. "Analysis," he growled. "Republic superweapon," a tactical droid stated with absolute certainty. "Probability 93%. Configuration suggests experimental siege platform. Recommend immediate engagement." "Republic superweapon," Loathsome repeated, mandibles clicking. The Jedi finally built something properly terrifying. He was wrong, of course. The Jedi had nothing to do with this. But neither did anyone else in this galaxy. Inside Spaceball One's chaotic bridge, President Skroob clung to his command throne while Colonel Sanders barked orders to crew members who were largely ignoring him in favor of panicking. "We've got emergency braking thrusters failing on decks 40 through 70, someone shouted. "The dimensional stabilizers are fried," another added. "Where the hell are we?" Skroob demanded, his voice hitting frequencies that made nearby crew members wince. Dark Helmet stood at the forward viewport, apparently unconcerned by their imminent crash. His comically oversized helmet, black, gleaming, and roughly the size of a navigation buoy, turned slowly as he surveyed the planet growing larger in their vision. In one gloved hand, he clutched his Schwartz ring, its golden band glowing with energy that pulsed in rhythm with his breathing. "I sense something," he announced dramatically. "A presence I haven't felt since," he paused. "Actually, I've never felt this." "What is this?" "That's called, we're about to crash, sir," Colonel Sanders supplied, gripping his console. "Maybe you could use your Schwartz to, I don't know, slow our descent." Dark Helmet waved dismissively. The Schwartz is for dramatic confrontations and intimidating inferiors, Colonel. Not for manual labor. We're descending at terminal velocity. Then I suggest you find something to hold on to. The impact carved a 5-kilometer scar across Christophilis' crystalline surface. Spaceball One's belly scraped terrain, venting atmosphere and debris, emergency repulsors firing in cascading failures that turned catastrophic crash into merely devastating hard landing. The vessel plowed through a forest of crystal formations, sending prismatic shards the size of buildings spinning into the air. When it finally ground to halt, half buried in shattered geology, Spaceball One sat steaming and groaning, but surprisingly intact. In orbit, both Republic and Separatist fleets held position, weapons charging, waiting to see what emerged from that ridiculous ship. They didn't have to wait long. The main boarding ramp descended with hydraulic hisses, venting steam dramatically. Through the mist, a figure appeared. Short, diminutively so. Clad in black armor that was clearly meant to invoke terror but somehow missed the mark. The oversized helmet caught Christophilis' twin suns, gleaming absurdly. Dark Helmet descended the ramp with what he clearly believed was menacing purpose, his cape billowing in wind that smelled of ozone and scorched crystal. Behind him, a small battalion of Spaceballs emerged, troops in ill-fitting armor, carrying weapons that looked functional but somehow wrong, as if designed by someone who'd heard guns described but never seen one. Dark Helmet surveyed the surrounding landscape. The crystal canyons, the distant sounds of clone versus droid warfare, the ships holding position in orbit, and raised both hands dramatically skyward. People of this galaxy, his voice boomed, amplified by suit speakers. I am Dark Helmet, Lord of the Schwartz, Master of the Spaceballs, and your new supreme ruler. Kneel before my terrible power. On the Resolute, Yularen exchanged glances with his bridge crew. Did he just declare himself our ruler, sir? Yes. Contact General Skywalker, Yularen ordered. Tell him we have a situation that's either a terrible threat or the galaxy's most elaborate joke. Possibly both. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Anakin Skywalker stood on a crystalline ridge 5 clicks from the crash site, electrobinoculars raised, absolutely certain he was hallucinating. Beside him, Obi-Wan Kenobi lowered his own binoculars with the expression of a man reconsidering every life choice that led to this moment. Anakin, Obi-Wan said carefully, please tell me you're seeing what I'm seeing. Short guy in a ridiculous helmet claiming to be a Dark Lord. Yes. Then we're both hallucinating. That's somehow less comforting than you think. They felt it then, both of them, simultaneously. A ripple in the Force, but wrong. Like hearing your native language spoken with an accent so thick it became a different tongue entirely. The sensation came from the diminutive figure in black, pulsing with energy that was almost like the dark side but fundamentally wasn't. Master, Anakin said slowly, what is that? Obi-Wan's hand drifted toward his lightsaber hilt. I have absolutely no idea. But I suspect we're about to find out. In orbit, Count Dooku stood aboard his command ship, elegant fingers steepled as he watched holographic feeds of the landing site. His pale face showed no expression, but inside, cold fury built like a gathering storm. Someone, something, had just declared itself a Dark Lord in his territory. This insult would not stand. The crystalline canyons of Christophilis amplified sound in strange ways, carrying Dark Helmet's proclamations across kilometers of battlefield. Clone troopers paused mid-advance, confused. Battle droids halted their firing sequences, audio receptors processing commands that made no tactical sense. Both armies had been fighting over this planet for weeks, a grinding siege that embodied everything brutal about the Clone Wars, and now this absurd interruption demanded attention neither side could afford to give. But the Force had other plans. Anakin and Obi-Wan approached on foot, leaving their gunship behind. The Jedi moved with practiced caution, lightsabers unignited but hands ready. Around them, crystal formations refracted the twin suns into rainbows that danced across armor and robes. The crash site grew closer with each step, and with it, that strange not quite dark side presence intensified. "I'm reading approximately 2,000 life forms aboard that vessel," Obi-Wan murmured, consulting a handheld scanner. "All human or near human. No droid signatures. Curious." "What's curious is that thing's energy signature," Anakin countered. He gestured toward Spaceball One's wounded bulk. "It's not hyperdrive residue. It's like the ship tore through something that shouldn't be torn through. Dimensional barriers, perhaps." "You say that like it's a normal Tuesday." Obi-Wan allowed himself a slight smile. "With you as my apprentice, Anakin, dimensional incursions barely rate as unusual anymore." They crested a ridge and got their first clear view of Dark Helmet's assembled forces. What they saw defied military logic. The Spaceballs troops stood in something approximating formation, but their spacing was wrong, their weapons discipline non-existent. Several were apparently arguing about something. Two were inexplicably playing a game that involved tossing a small object back and forth. Their armor bore scuff marks and dents that suggested it had seen combat, but not recently, and possibly not ever maintained. Dark Helmet himself stood atop a portable platform that elevated his diminutive height to something approaching average. He was gesticulating wildly, apparently delivering a speech to troops who clearly weren't listening. "And once we've conquered this pathetic galaxy, we'll have all the air we need. Unlimited air. We'll breathe so much air that planet Spaceball will, are you listening to me?" "Sir, yes sir," a trooper responded, clearly lying. "Then why are you eating?" "Lunch break, sir." Dark Helmet's helmet somehow conveyed fury despite being an inanimate object. "There are no lunch breaks during galactic conquest." Colonel Sanders appeared beside him, datapad in hand. "Sir, scanners detect 2 life forms approaching. Both sides appear to be watching us. Perhaps we should." "Are you suggesting we show weakness, Colonel?" "I'm suggesting we show intelligence, sir." "Same thing." Dark Helmet waved dismissively. "Send out a squad. Have them capture these sword wielders. I want to interrogate them about who's in charge here so I know who to overthrow." Anakin sensed them before seeing them, 12 Spaceballs troops emerging from behind a crystal outcropping, weapons raised. The weapons looked functional enough, blasters of some kind, though the design was blocky and inefficient. But the troops' approach pattern was textbook terrible. No covering fire positions. No staggered advance. They simply walked forward in a clump. "Halt," the lead trooper called out. "You are hereby ordered to surrender to the Spaceball Empire. Drop your weapons and prepare for interrogation." Obi-Wan raised an eyebrow. "Spaceball Empire? I'm as confused as you are, Master." The Jedi stopped walking but made no move to surrender. Obi-Wan stepped forward, hands visible and empty, voice calm and diplomatic. "Greetings. I am Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, and this is Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker. We represent the Galactic Republic. Perhaps we could speak with your commander." The lead trooper consulted with his squad mates in what was clearly meant to be a whispered conversation but carried perfectly across the crystals. "What's a Jedi? Some kind of sword guys? Do we shoot sword guys?" "The manual doesn't cover sword guys." "Then improvise." Anakin's hand drifted toward his lightsaber. "Master, I don't think they're taking this seriously." "On the contrary, Anakin. I suspect they're taking it very seriously. They're simply catastrophically incompetent." The lead trooper pointed his blaster more aggressively. "Final warning. Surrender or face the full might of." He never finished. A clone trooper squad crested the ridge behind the Jedi, white armor gleaming, DC-15 rifles raised with professional precision. Their commander, bearing orange markings, sized up the situation instantly. General Kenobi, General Skywalker. We received your transmission about the crash site. Are these hostiles? The Spaceballs troops immediately panicked. Half raised their weapons. The other half raised their hands. One dropped his blaster entirely. Their formation, such as it was, collapsed into chaos. Hostiles, someone shouted. More sword guys and white armor guys. Return fire. No wait, maybe surrender. What's the protocol here? A blaster bolt screamed past Obi-Wan's shoulder, whether aimed at him or fired accidentally, neither Jedi could determine. But the clones responded with trained efficiency, laying down suppressing fire that sent Spaceballs troops diving for cover behind crystal formations. Hold fire. Obi-Wan commanded, force-pushing one errant clone blast into the ground. We need them alive for questioning. But the damage was done. Alarms shrieked across Spaceball One's hull. Emergency lighting bathed the crash site in red. And on his platform, Dark Helmet watched the firefight erupt with an expression hidden behind his massive helmet but conveyed through body language that screamed indignation. They shot at my troops, he bellowed. They shot at my troops. Colonel Sanders. Sir. Deploy Platoon B. No, deploy Company C. Actually, deploy everyone. We're under attack. Sir, we don't know who these people are or what they're capable of. I don't care. Nobody shoots at Spaceballs forces and lives. Prepare my personal fighter. I'm going out there. Your personal fighter is still damaged from the dimensional breach, sir. Dark Helmet paused. Then, slowly, he raised his right hand. The Schwartz ring on his finger began to glow, pulsing with golden energy that built and built until it cast visible light across the crash site. The air around him shimmered. Loose debris began to levitate. And 5 kilometers away, aboard Count Dooku's command ship, the Sith Lord's eyes snapped open. What is that? Dooku whispered. His tactical officer, a sharp-eyed human, consulted readouts. My lord, we're detecting massive energy buildup at the crash site. It's similar to. It reads like force energy, but the signature is completely wrong. Dooku stood, elegant robes settling around him as he approached the viewport. Below, Christophilis turned slowly, the crash site visible as a dark scar against crystalline terrain. He reached out with the force, touching that presence he'd sensed earlier. It was absurd. Ridiculous. A parody of the dark side, like a child playing at being Sith. But it was also real. Undeniably, impossibly real. Prepare my solar sailor, Dooku commanded. I will investigate this myself. My lord, the Republic forces. Will wait. Dooku's voice carried absolute certainty. This takes precedence. Back at the crash site, Dark Helmet descended from his platform, Schwartz ring blazing. Spaceballs troops poured from the ship's various hatches, hundreds of them, creating a chaotic perimeter that had no tactical coherence but impressive numbers. Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber. The blue blade hummed to life, casting sapphire light across his bearded face. Anakin, I believe we've stumbled into something significantly more complicated than a simple crash landing. Anakin's own blue blade ignited with a snap hiss. You think? The clone commander's voice crackled over comms. Generals, we have incoming. Separatist dropships, Vector 273. ETA 3 minutes. Of course, Obi-Wan sighed. Why would this be simple? Dark Helmet pointed dramatically at the Jedi, his Schwartz ring's glow intensifying. You there. Sword people. I am Dark Helmet, Lord of the Schwartz. Kneel before me or face obliteration. Anakin blinked. Did he just call us sword people? I believe he did. And what's the Schwartz? I haven't the faintest idea. Dark Helmet's voice rose to a theatrical boom. Witness the power of the Schwartz. The dark side of the Schwartz. Behold. He thrust his ring forward. Golden energy erupted outward in a wave that was absolutely, undeniably real. It slammed into the crystal formation nearest the Jedi with concussive force, shattering it into 1,000 glittering fragments. The shockwave rolled outward, knocking clones and Spaceballs troops alike off their feet. Only the Jedi remained standing, having reinforced their positions with the Force. But both wore expressions of profound confusion. That power. That impossible, ridiculous, somehow functional power. It worked like the Force. But it wasn't the Force. Obi-Wan steadied himself, mind racing through possibilities. Anakin, I think we've encountered something that shouldn't exist. Welcome to my life, Master. Above them, Separatist dropships broke through cloud cover, carrying battle droids and war machines. Count Dooku's solar sailor descended on silent repulsors, elegant and deadly. And in orbit, both Republic and Separatist fleets moved into combat positions, preparing for a battle that none of them understood. The Clone Wars had just become infinitely more complicated. The crystalline battlefield transformed into a three-way disaster. Clone troopers established defensive positions among the shattered crystal formations, their training overriding confusion. Separatist dropships disgorged battle droids in perfect formation, clanking, mechanical efficiency that contrasted sharply with the Spaceballs troops' panicked scrambling. And caught between them, Dark Helmet stood upon his platform, Schwartz ring still glowing, apparently convinced he was winning. Excellent, he declared, surveying the chaos. They send more troops because they fear me. Colonel Sanders, prepare victory speech number 7. Sir, those are enemy reinforcements, Sanders replied, exhaustion evident in his voice. 2 enemy factions, actually. We're outnumbered approximately 20-1. Details, Colonel. Leadership is about confidence, not mathematics. Mathematics is why we're still stuck on this planet instead of. The first quad laser turret emerged from Spaceball One's dorsal hull, rotating with mechanical precision before opening fire. The shots went wide, dramatically wide, carving glowing furrows through crystal and soil but striking nothing of tactical value. A second turret engaged, this one actually hitting a Separatist AAT tank, the armored vehicle exploding in a satisfying fireball. Dark Helmet pumped his fist triumphantly. See? We're dominating. The AAT had been unmanned, positioned as a decoy. Count Dooku's solar sailor touched down with aristocratic grace, its curved solar sail folding like the wings of some predatory bird. The Count emerged, crimson lightsaber hilt visible at his belt, pale face expressionless as he surveyed the battlefield. Battle droids immediately formed protective ranks around him, but he waved them back with one elegant gesture. Hold your fire, Dooku commanded. I wish to see this. Dark Lord, for myself. His voice carried across the battlefield with force-enhanced projection. Clones and droids alike paused, recognizing the authority of a genuine Sith Lord. Even the Spaceballs troops felt something, though they couldn't articulate what. Only Dark Helmet seemed immune to the weight of Dooku's presence. Finally. Helmet declared. Someone with proper dramatic flair. You there, with the beard. Are you in charge? Dooku's eyebrow rose fractionally. I am Count Dooku, leader of the Separatist Alliance, apprentice to the most powerful being in the galaxy, and wielder of the dark side of the Force. He paused deliberately. And you are? I am Dark Helmet, Lord of the Schwartz, Supreme Commander of the Spaceballs, and, he gestured dramatically at his oversized helmet, clearly the more intimidating Dark Lord. I mean, look at this helmet. It's huge. Silence fell across the battlefield. Clone troopers exchanged bewildered glances. Battle droids processed this information and returned error codes. Even Colonel Sanders buried his face in his hands. Obi-Wan leaned toward Anakin. Is he challenging Count Dooku to a helmet measuring contest? I think he genuinely believes that's how Sith hierarchies work, Anakin replied, equally baffled. Dooku's composure cracked just slightly, twitch at the corner of his mouth that might have been irritation or, impossibly, amusement. The Schwartz, he repeated, tasting the word like fine wine gone sour. You claim mastery of something called the Schwartz. Not claim. I am the master of the Schwartz. Dark Helmet thrust his ring forward again. Golden energy crackled around his fist, wild and undisciplined but undeniably present. The dark side of the Schwartz. Can you feel its terrible power? Dooku could feel it. That was the problem. The energy radiating from this absurd little man was real. Crude, yes. Unfocused, certainly. But it resonated with the Force in ways that shouldn't be possible. It was as if someone had taken the dark side, filtered it through a funhouse mirror, and emerged with something that worked despite violating every principle Dooku had spent decades mastering. The Count's hand drifted toward his lightsaber. Demonstrate this, Schwartz. If you can. Oh, I can demonstrate. Dark Helmet looked around wildly for a suitable target. His gaze settled on a massive crystal spire, easily 30 meters tall, jutting from the ground like a crystalline tooth. Watch this. He raised both hands, Schwartz ring blazing brighter. The golden energy coalesced, building with visible intensity. Dark Helmet's breathing grew labored, his body trembling with effort. The air itself seemed to compress. Witness, the raw power. The energy released in a focused beam that struck the crystal spire dead center. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then cracks spiderwebbed across the formation's surface, racing upward and outward. The entire spire shuddered, groaned, and toppled sideways, crashing down in an explosion of prismatic shards that scattered across a 100-meter radius. Spaceballs troops cheered. Clone troopers took defensive positions. Battle droids recalculated threat assessments. Obi-Wan felt it through the Force. The technique was telekinesis, basically, but channeled through a completely foreign methodology. The Schwartz ring acted as a focus, but the power itself came from within Dark Helmet. It was the Force, and yet it categorically wasn't. Master, Anakin said quietly, how is that possible? I don't know. But I intend to find out. Dooku, meanwhile, had seen enough. This buffoon possessed genuine power, limited, yes, but real enough to pose an unpredictable variable. And in the careful orchestration of Darth Sidious's grand plan, unpredictable variables were unacceptable. Impressive, Dooku said, his voice carrying calculated condescension. For a parlor trick. Allow me to demonstrate true mastery of the dark side. He didn't ignite his lightsaber. Didn't raise his hands dramatically. Count Dooku simply extended one finger toward a crystal formation twice the size of the one Dark Helmet had toppled. The Force answered his call with elegant precision, no wild energy, no visible glow, just absolute control. The crystal lifted smoothly from the ground, roots and all, tons of material floating as if weightless. Dooku held it suspended for 3 seconds, then placed it down 15 meters away with such gentleness it didn't crack. That, Dooku said quietly, is power. Dark Helmet stared. His helmet tilted slightly, processing. Then, okay, that was pretty good. But did you see how much flashier mine was? Mine had the energy beams and the glowing and everything. Flashy does not equal effective. It does in my experience. Colonel Sanders stepped forward, attempting damage control. Perhaps we could discuss this diplomatically. We're new to this galaxy and don't fully understand the local political situation. There is no diplomacy with pretenders, Dooku cut him off. His eyes, cold and calculating, fixed on Dark Helmet. You claim to be a Dark Lord. Very well. Prove it. Face me in single combat. Dark Helmet's response was immediate, absolutely not. Everyone stopped. Dooku blinked. I mean, Helmet continued, that would be unfair to you. I'm clearly the superior Dark Lord. Fighting you would be like a Star Destroyer battling an escape pod. Tragic, really. You refuse my challenge. I decline to embarrass you publicly. There's a difference. Dark Helmet turned to Sanders. Colonel, prepare my terms for their surrender. Include the part about kneeling. People need to kneel. It's very important for the optics. Dooku's patience, already strained, evaporated. His lightsaber sprang to life, crimson blade humming with lethal promise. You will face me. Or I will cut down every one of your troops where they stand. The threat hung in the air. Spaceballs' troops shifted nervously, hands tightening on weapons. Dark Helmet's helmet somehow conveyed panic despite being an inanimate object. That's hardly sporting. I am Sith. We do not do sporting. Obi-Wan made his decision. The Jedi stepped between the two Dark Lords, one legitimate, one ludicrous, lightsaber still ignited, positioning himself as a physical barrier. Count Dooku, Obi-Wan said calmly, perhaps we should all take a moment to understand what's actually happening here. This vessel appeared from nowhere through what appears to be dimensional breach. Their technology doesn't match any known design. And their commander wields energy that resembles the Force but clearly isn't. Slaughtering them before we understand what they represent seems premature. Dooku's gaze shifted to the Jedi Master. Ah, Kenobi. Ever the diplomat. Tell me, do you often defend those who declare themselves galactic conquerors? I defend the opportunity to gather information before committing to violence. How very Jedi of you. Anakin moved to flank Obi-Wan, his own lightsaber ready. Behind them, clone troopers adjusted positions, covering the Jedi's backs. The tactical situation was becoming a nightmare. Republic forces protecting ridiculous invaders from Separatist forces, all while said invaders continued to somehow make everything worse. Dark Helmet, sensing an opportunity, stepped forward. Yes. Listen to Sword Person 1. He understands that I'm clearly too important to fight directly. Now, if you'll all just acknowledge my supremacy. A blaster bolt screamed past his helmet, close enough to singe paint. President Skroob stood at Spaceball One's main boarding ramp, smoke rising from his own comically oversized blaster. Helmet. Stop antagonizing the locals and get back to the ship. We need to assess damage and figure out where we are. Mr. President. I was in the middle of establishing dominance. You were in the middle of getting us all killed. Again. Skroob's voice carried across the battlefield with the authority of pure exasperation. Colonel Sanders. Get our idiot Dark Lord back inside before he starts a war we can't win. Too late for that, sir, Sanders muttered, but he moved to comply. Dooku watched this display with fascination bordering on horror. These people, these absurd, bumbling people, possessed technology and power that could genuinely threaten his plans, yet they wielded it with all the strategic acumen of younglings playing at war. Dangerous fools were still dangerous. His comlink chimed. Dooku activated it with a thought, and the hooded visage of Darth Sidious materialized in miniature hologram. My lord, Dooku said, surprise evident despite his control. Report, Sidious commanded, his voice carrying the weight of galaxies. We have a situation. Darth Sidious listened to Count Dooku's report with the patience of a predator who had spent decades perfecting his schemes. On Coruscant, within his chancellor's office, Palpatine sat in shadow, yellow eyes gleaming beneath his hood. The hologram flickered with interference. Christophilis's crystalline geology disrupted transmissions, but the message came through clearly enough. Dimensional breach. Unknown vessel. Parity force powers that somehow functioned. Self-proclaimed Dark Lord with delusions of grandeur and technology that defied conventional analysis. And you are certain this, Schwartz, is not simply a crude application of the Force? Sidious asked, his tone dangerously mild. Certain, my lord. Dooku's holographic form gestured subtly. I have touched it with the Force. It resonates similarly but operates on fundamentally different principles. Like hearing basic spoken by someone whose vocal structure renders it simultaneously comprehensible and alien. Intriguing. Sidious steepled his fingers. And this dark helmet genuinely believes himself a threat. He believes many things, my lord. Few of them connected to reality. Yet his incompetence creates chaos that even I cannot fully predict. That gave Sidious pause. Count Dooku, trained duelist, political mastermind, Sith Lord of considerable power, admitting to uncertainty. The variable this represented could be useful. Or catastrophic. Observe them, Sidious commanded. Learn what you can. If they prove useful to our plans, exploit them. If they prove dangerous, he let the implication hang. The galaxy has no shortage of tragic accidents. As you wish, my lord. The transmission ended. Dooku deactivated his comlink and surveyed the battlefield once more. The Spaceballs forces had retreated to defensive positions around their crashed vessel, establishing a perimeter that had more holes than a Republic Senate ethics hearing. The Jedi maintained position between both forces, clearly attempting to prevent further escalation. Clone troopers held discipline, awaiting orders. A fascinating stalemate. Dooku made a decision that would have surprised anyone who knew him. He walked forward, alone, lightsaber deactivated and clipped to his belt. I propose a temporary ceasefire, he announced, voice carrying across crystal and chaos. Clearly, we all have questions. Perhaps we might answer them before resorting to further violence. Obi-Wan's surprise showed only in the slight widening of his eyes. Count Dooku suggesting diplomacy. The galaxy had indeed turned strange. I'm listening, Obi-Wan replied cautiously. Dark Helmet, being escorted back to the ship by Colonel Sanders, stopped mid-stride. A ceasefire? Does that mean they're surrendering? No, sir, Sanders said wearily. It means we stop shooting at each other temporarily so we can talk. Talking is just surrendering with extra steps. With respect, sir, that's the stupidest thing you've said today. And you've set a very high bar. President Skroob descended the boarding ramp with surprising dignity, his ridiculous robes somehow conveying authority despite their garish colors. He was flanked by two Spaceballs officers who at least attempted to look professional. Skroob's eyes, sharp despite his buffoonish reputation, assessed the situation quickly. All right, Skroob addressed the assembled forces, let's establish some basic facts. 1. We're not from your galaxy. 2. We didn't crash here intentionally. 3. We're willing to negotiate provided nobody tries to blow up our ship. Questions? Several thousand, Obi-Wan replied. But let's start with the obvious. What is your vessel's point of origin, and how did you breach into our reality? Skroob looked to Colonel Sanders, who consulted a datapad. We were executing emergency hyperspace jump from planet Druidia after complications with local authorities. Our navigation system suffered cascade failure mid-jump. The drives overcorrected, punched through what our sensors identified as dimensional membrane, and deposited us here. Anakin frowned. Hyperspace doesn't work like that. You can't just punch through dimensions. Tell that to our engineering deck, Sanders replied dryly. They're still trying to figure out how we survived. Dooku circled the conversation like a hunting vine cat, elegant and dangerous. Your technology suggests industrial civilization but not particularly advanced. Yet you achieved dimensional breach, accidental or not, which implies capabilities beyond your apparent sophistication. We prefer to think of it as maximizing our inefficiencies, Skroob said. That's not a thing, Anakin muttered. It is now. A clone commander approached Obi-Wan, helmet tucked under one arm. General, we've completed preliminary scans of the crashed vessel. It's massive. Crew capacity approximately 5,000, though current complement is closer to 2,000. Weapon systems are unusual. Some match our technology, others are completely foreign. Hull composition includes materials we can't identify. Life support? Obi-Wan asked. Functional but strained. They vented significant atmosphere during the crash. By our estimates, they have maybe 72 hours of breathable air left unless they can effect repairs. That explained much. Desperation made even buffoons dangerous. Dark Helmet, who had been ominously quiet, suddenly pushed past Sanders. Wait. Did you say 72 hours of air? Yes, sir, the clone confirmed. That's what this was all about in the first place. Helmet gestured wildly at the sky. We came to this dimension looking for air. And now we're stuck on a planet with indigenous sword people and robot armies and we still don't have enough air. To be fair, sir, Sanders interjected, we were looking for air in our original galaxy. This is a completely different crisis. I'm surrounded by idiots. President Skroob massaged his temples. Helmet, please stop helping. But the damage was done. Both Jedi and Count Dooku had heard the critical detail, Spaceball One was dying. The ship might be massive, might possess strange technology and stranger powers, but it was fundamentally crippled. That changed calculations considerably. Obi-Wan saw opportunity. We can provide assistance with your life support crisis. The Republic has resources. As does the Separatist Alliance, Dooku cut in smoothly. And we are far less bureaucratic in our aid distribution. Both were making offers. Both were maneuvering for advantage. Skroob's eyes narrowed. What's the catch? Information, Obi-Wan said honestly. Your technology. Your dimensional breach methodology. How the Schwartz functions. In exchange for life support assistance and potential passage to a safer location. Dooku smiled thinly. I offer the same exchange. Though I would add one additional element, alliance. The Separatist cause fights against a corrupt republic that strangles 1,000 worlds with bureaucracy and incompetence. Surely you, having just arrived, can see the value in supporting the faction that values efficiency. Efficiency? Anakin couldn't help himself. You use slave labor and planet-killing weapons. Simplifications and propaganda, young Skywalker. The political positioning was happening in real time, both sides attempting to recruit the Spaceballs into their war. It was, Obi-Wan reflected, a profoundly terrible idea on multiple levels. These people couldn't organize a proper perimeter defense. Giving them access to either side's resources would be like arming younglings with thermal detonators. Yet the alternative, letting them die or fall into enemy hands, seemed equally problematic. Dark Helmet apparently reached his own conclusion. We don't need anyone's help. The Spaceballs are self-sufficient. We'll repair our own ship, establish our own empire, and conquer this galaxy on our own terms. Sir, Sanders said quietly, we literally cannot repair the life support without parts we don't have. Then we'll improvise. With what? Science. Or, space magic. Or, the Schwartz. Dark Helmet thrust his ring forward again. Golden energy flickered weakly, sputtered, and died. He stared at his hand in betrayal. What? No. Work, you stupid ring. Work. Colonel Sanders checked his own datapad. Sir, you've exhausted your Schwartz reserves. You used too much power showing off to the locals. I wasn't showing off. I was establishing dominance. You toppled one crystal spire and nearly passed out. Details. Dooku watched this exchange with the expression of someone discovering a new species of insect, fascinating, repulsive, and utterly beneath him. Your Dark Lord is ineffective. Your military is undisciplined. Your ship is dying. Yet you refuse aid. Curious strategy. President Skroob held up a hand, silencing Dark Helmet's incoming tirade. Let's be realistic. We need help. But we're not stupid enough to ally with either of you without understanding what we're getting into. He pointed at Obi-Wan. You represent the Republic. The Jedi Order, specifically. But yes, we serve the Republic. And you? Skroob turned to Dooku. Separatists. The Confederacy of Independent Systems. We seek freedom from Republic tyranny. So you're in a civil war. A war of liberation, Dooku corrected. Potato. Skroob crossed his arms. Here's our position, we'll accept technical assistance from whoever can prove they're not going to stab us in the back the moment we're useful. We'll share non-critical information about our technology. We will not be joining anyone's war. And Dark Helmet will stop challenging people to dominance contests. I will not. Helmet protested. You will if you want to keep breathing, you idiot. A tactical droid approached Count Dooku, photoreceptors glowing. Sir, we have incoming transmission from the Invincible. Admiral Loathsome reports Republic reinforcements entering the system. He requests orders. Dooku considered. This situation was spiraling into complexity that served no one's interests, except possibly chaos itself. Tell the Admiral to hold position. Monitor but do not engage. Obi-Wan received a similar report from his clone commander. Admiral Yulren's fleet was moving into defensive positions, prepared for Separatist treachery. The Clone Wars' grinding machinery continued regardless of dimensional anomalies. It seems, Obi-Wan said carefully, that we're all caught in a situation requiring cooperation. Or elimination of variables, Dooku countered. This ship represents unknown technology in a war of known quantities. Some would argue the safest course is its destruction. Spaceballs troops immediately raised weapons. Clone troopers responded in kind. Battle droids powered up primary weapons. In seconds, the temporary ceasefire teetered on the edge of resuming violence. President Skroob's voice cut through the tension. And hear me out, we could not do that. Crazy idea, I know. Dark Helmet's Schwartz ring began glowing again, energy reserves apparently recovered just enough for dramatic gesturing. You dare threaten the Spaceballs? A new voice interrupted, amplified and carrying the weight of command. All forces, stand down. Everyone turned. Approaching from the Republic lines came a figure in brown robes, diminutive in stature, walking with a jimmer stick that seemed more affectation than necessity. Ancient eyes surveyed the scene with wisdom accumulated over centuries. Master Yoda had arrived. Master Yoda's presence changed everything. The ancient Jedi Master moved with deliberate slowness, his jimmer stick tapping against crystalline ground, each step resonating with the Force in ways that made even battle droids hesitate. Clone troopers straightened to attention. Obi-Wan and Anakin immediately bowed respectfully. Even Count Dooku, Sith Lord and fallen Jedi, inclined his head fractionally in acknowledgement of his former teacher. Dark Helmet, naturally, had no idea who this small green creature was. What is that? He whispered to Colonel Sanders. Some kind of indigenous species? Sir, I have no idea, Sanders replied, equally confused. But everyone else just stopped threatening each other, so maybe show some respect. Respect? For something that comes up to my knee? Sir, you're 4'8". Irrelevant. Yoda's ears twitched, the only sign he'd heard the exchange. The Grand Master stopped 10 meters from the assembled forces, planting his jimmer stick firmly, and surveyed the situation with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of governments, the birth and death of stars, and now, apparently, the arrival of dimensional buffoons. Interesting, this is, Yoda said, his ancient voice carrying perfect clarity. Much disturbance in the Force, I sense. But also, his gaze fixed on Dark Helmet. Something else. Not the Force. Yet like the Force. Curious. Dark Helmet puffed up his chest. Finally. Someone recognizes genuine power when they see it. Yes, small green person, I am Dark Helmet, Lord of the... Quiet, you will be, Yoda interrupted, not even looking at him. Adults are talking. Spaceballs troops struggled to suppress laughter. Even some clone troopers' shoulders shook suspiciously. Dark Helmet's helmet somehow conveyed indignation so profound it became visible. Did he just... Yes, sir, Sanders confirmed. He told you to be quiet. Nobody tells Dark Helmet to be quiet. The small green person just did. Yoda turned his attention to Obi-Wan. Report, you will, Master Kenobi. Clearly, much has happened. Obi-Wan provided a concise summary: dimensional breach, crashed vessel, claims of Schwartz powers, standoff between Republic, Separatist, and Spaceballs forces, the ship's critical life support situation. Yoda listened without interruption, occasionally humming thoughtfully. 72 hours of air, they have? Yoda asked. Approximately, Master Yoda. And aid, they need? Yes, Master. Then aid them, we shall. Count Dooku stepped forward. Master Yoda. Surely you recognize the strategic liability these people represent. Unknown technology, unpredictable powers, no allegiance to any faction. Helping them is the right thing to do, Yoda finished, his tone leaving no room for argument. Stranded, they are. Dying, their ship is. Debate politics later, we can. Save lives now, we must. It was quintessentially Jedi. Dooku had once admired that moral clarity. Now it simply frustrated him. Your compassion blinds you to tactical reality. And your tactics blind you to basic decency, Yoda countered. Changed, you have, Dooku. Sad, this makes me. The moment hung heavy. Former master and fallen student, separated by philosophy and the dark side, facing each other across a battlefield that had become absurdly complicated. President Skroob, sensing opportunity, cleared his throat. If I may interrupt this deeply emotional moment, we accept the Jedi's help. Provisionally. Pending our engineering team's assessment of whatever aid you're offering. Yoda nodded. Commander, engineering support provide. Medical supplies send. Food, water, basic necessities. He glanced at Dark Helmet. And perhaps, sedatives for the loud one. I am not loud. Dark Helmet shouted. I project. It's called leadership presence. Yes. Leadership. Yoda's tone dripped with skepticism that transcended species barriers. Anakin leaned toward Obi-Wan. Master, is it wrong that I'm enjoying this? Terribly wrong, Anakin. But I'm enjoying it too. Count Dooku recognized defeat, tactical, temporary defeat, but defeat nonetheless. Yoda's presence changed the political calculus. The Jedi Grandmaster commanded respect that transcended faction lines. Moving against him openly would be problematic, even for Dooku. Very well, Dooku said smoothly. The Separatist alliance withdraws from this immediate situation. However, he fixed President Skroob with a meaningful look. Should you reconsider your neutrality, we offer far more attractive terms than the Republic's bureaucratic morass. Consider it an open invitation. We'll consider it filed under suspicious offers from suspicious people, Skroob replied. Dooku's smile was thin and dangerous. How pragmatic. I suspect we'll speak again. He turned, crimson robes swirling, and walked back toward his solar sailor. Battle droids began withdrawing in orderly fashion, leaving the field to Republic forces and very confused Spaceballs troops. As Dooku's ship lifted off, ascending toward his orbiting command vessel, Yoda watched with ancient sadness in his eyes. Lost, he is. More than he knows. Obi-Wan said nothing. Some truths required no commentary. With the Separatist withdrawal, tension eased considerably. Clone engineers approached Spaceball One cautiously, scanning equipment ready, prepared to assess the life support crisis. Spaceball's troops watched them with suspicion but didn't interfere. President Skroob had apparently established enough authority to keep his people in line. Dark Helmet, however, remained a problem. "I don't like this," he announced to anyone listening. "We're accepting help from people who look like they clone themselves. That's weird. You know what else is weird? Fighting robots. And laser swords. This whole galaxy is weird." "Sir," Sanders said patiently, "we're from a galaxy where we vacuum clean planets for air. We don't get to call other people weird. That's completely different." "How?" "Because we're us. We're supposed to be weird. It's our thing." Yoda approached the Spaceballs delegation, Jimmer stick tapping rhythmically. Up close, his presence was even more overwhelming, centuries of accumulated wisdom and power compressed into a frame that barely reached Dark Helmet's chest. "Dark Helmet, you are called?" Yoda asked. "Lord Dark Helmet," Helmet corrected automatically. "Master of the Schwartz, Supreme Commander of." "Yes, yes. Titles, many you have." Yoda's ears drooped slightly. "Substance, less certain I am about." "Are you questioning my power?" "Question it." "No." Yoda's eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement. "Understand it, I wish to." "This Schwartz." "Show me." Dark Helmet hesitated. Something about this small creature made him genuinely nervous, though he'd never admit it. My reserves are depleted," Colonel Sanders said. "Excuses, I hear. Power, I do not see." That stung Dark Helmet's ego in exactly the right place. "Fine. You want to see the Schwartz? I'll show you the Schwartz." He raised his ring hand, focusing. Golden energy flickered, sputtered, then stabilized into a weak glow. "Behold. The dark side of the..." Yoda raised one three-fingered hand. The Force answered his call with effortless grace. A crystal fragment, small, no larger than a fist, lifted from the ground and floated gently between them. But always, balance there must be. Control. Discipline. Understanding. He let the crystal settle back to the ground. "This Schwartz of yours. Similar it is. But crude. Unfocused. Like child swinging stick, pretending at swordsmanship." Dark Helmet's voice cracked slightly. "The Schwartz is powerful. I toppled an entire crystal spire." Yes. With much effort, much energy spent, much showing off." Yoda's tone wasn't cruel, just matter-of-fact. "Effective? Perhaps. Efficient? No. Sustainable? Definitely not." It was possibly the first time in Dark Helmet's life that someone had critiqued his power without mockery or anger, just honest assessment from a position of such overwhelming superiority that argument seemed pointless. Colonel Sanders watched his commander deflate and felt something unexpected, pity. "Master Yoda," Sanders interjected diplomatically, "perhaps you could teach Lord Helmet some techniques. If the Schwartz and the Force are related, maybe. Teach him." Yoda's ears perked up. Interesting thought, this is." He studied Dark Helmet with renewed interest. "Willing to learn, are you, Dark Helmet? Truly learn. Not just gain power, but understand it." Dark Helmet hesitated. Pride warred with pragmatism. "Finally, what's the catch?" "Catch? No catch. Only requirements, humility, discipline, patience, willingness to fail and try again. These things, have you?" Yes. "Sound uncertain, you do." "I'm very certain." Completely certain. The most certain person in this galaxy. Yoda sighed deeply. Much work, this will take. President Skroob, observing this exchange, made a calculation. If the Jedi could keep Dark Helmet occupied, maybe even channel his destructive incompetence into something productive, it would give the rest of them time to repair the ship without Helmet helping. Master Yoda, Skroob said, we would be honored if you could provide Lord Helmet with instruction in these force techniques. Cultural exchange and all that. Yoda's eyes gleamed with something that might have been mischief. Very well. Tonight, training begins. Meditation chamber, I will require. Quiet. Peaceful. We can arrange that, Skroob agreed quickly. Dark Helmet looked between them, suddenly suspicious. Wait. What kind of training? Patience training, Yoda said innocently. Breathing exercises. Clearing the mind. Very simple. Very boring. Very necessary. That sounds terrible. Yes. Effective training often does. Anakin whispered to Obi-Wan. Master, is Master Yoda actually going to teach him, or is this an elaborate way to keep him from interfering with repairs? Yes, Obi-Wan replied. That's not. Both, Anakin. The answer is both. As clone engineers established communication with Spaceballs engineering teams, assessing the life support crisis in detail, the situation began stabilizing. Food, water, and medical supplies flowed from Republic transports. Spaceball One's crew began organizing into something resembling military order under Colonel Sanders' competent direction. And in orbit, Count Dooku watched everything through tactical displays, mind already working through possibilities. These Spaceballs were fools, yes. But useful fools could be exploited. And if they possessed technology capable of dimensional breach, even accidentally, that represented power Darth Sidious would want to understand. Plans within plans. Schemes within schemes. The Clone Wars had just gained a wild card neither side fully understood. Night fell over Christophilis, transforming the crystalline landscape into a galaxy of reflected starlight. Each formation became a mirror, capturing and fragmenting the light from distant suns until the planet's surface resembled a shattered jewel box. Inside Spaceball One's damaged hull, emergency lighting cast everything in red and amber, giving the massive ship's corridors an atmosphere of controlled desperation. Clone engineers worked alongside Spaceballs technicians in an alliance born of necessity rather than trust. The Republic specialists had quickly assessed the situation. Life support systems were failing in cascading sequence, atmospheric scrubbers operating at 40% efficiency, oxygen recyclers damaged beyond field repair. Without intervention, the crew had perhaps 60 hours of breathable air remaining. Your environmental systems are. A clone engineer paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing. Unique. The Spaceballs technician, a harried woman named Chief Engineer Parsons, didn't even look up from her diagnostic panel. You can say, stupid. We all think it. The previous administration prioritized looking impressive over functional efficiency. I was trying to be polite. Politeness won't fix our scrubbers. What do you need? Access to your primary atmospheric processing deck. And possibly a bottle of something strong for when I see what's actually keeping you alive. Parsons managed a tired smile. Follow me. And fair warning, it's worse than you think. Elsewhere in the ship, in what had been hastily converted into a meditation chamber by the simple expedient of removing furniture and adding some salvaged cushions, Master Yoda sat in perfect stillness. Before him, Dark Helmet fidgeted. This is stupid, Helmet announced for the 7th time in 10 minutes. Said that already, you have, Yoda replied, eyes still closed. Repeat it, perhaps you should not. I'm just saying, sitting quietly isn't training. Training involves action. Combat. Demonstrating power. Power you wish to demonstrate. Breathe without making noise, try first. Dark Helmet attempted to breathe quietly. He lasted approximately 12 seconds before huffing in frustration. This is impossible. My helmet amplifies everything. Then remove helmet, you should. Silence. The kind of silence that suggested Yoda had just proposed something fundamentally unacceptable. I don't remove the helmet, Dark Helmet said carefully. Why not? It's my thing. Dark Lords have helmets. It's intimidating. It's hiding behind metal, you are, Yoda interrupted gently. Fear what others see, you do. Interesting, this is. I'm not afraid of anything. Then helmet remove. Prove it. Dark Helmet's hands moved to his helmet's release catches, then stopped. Something in that moment, in that tiny meditation chamber aboard a dying ship in an alien galaxy, made him confront a truth he'd spent years avoiding. The helmet wasn't just costume. It was shield. Armor against mockery, against being seen as he truly was. Small. Unremarkable. Ordinary. I can't, he whispered. Yoda opened his eyes. In them, Dark Helmet saw no judgment. Only understanding. Afraid of appearing weak, you are. Compensate with loudness, with posturing, with claims of power. Recognize this, I do. Seen it before, many times. In other Dark Lords. In young Jedi. In Padawans who fear they are not enough. Yoda's voice carried ancient sadness. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. But also, fear leads to helmet that never comes off. Despite himself, Dark Helmet laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. You're saying I'm like your students. Saying everyone is afraid, I am. Difference is what you do with fear. Let it control you. Or acknowledge it, learn from it, grow beyond it. Dark Helmet sat silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached up and disengaged his helmet's seals. The hiss of equalizing pressure seemed impossibly loud. He lifted the massive helmet off, revealing the face beneath, surprisingly young, with dark hair plastered to his scalp with sweat, and eyes that held more vulnerability than he'd ever shown. There, he said quietly. Happy? Irrelevant, my happiness is, Yoda replied. Brave, this was. Acknowledge that, I do. Now, breathing exercise again. Try. This time, Dark Helmet, just helmet now, or perhaps the man beneath the helmet. Actually tried. On Spaceball One's command deck, President Skroob reviewed status reports with Colonel Sanders while watching through viewports as Republic vessels maintained orbital positions. The situation was stabilizing, but suspicion remained. Do we trust them? Skroob asked bluntly. Sanders considered carefully. The clones follow orders and seem genuinely interested in helping. The Jedi, he paused. They're idealists. Dangerous in their own way, but not to us. Not immediately. And the Separatists? Withdrew too easily. Count Dooku is planning something. Obviously. Skroob drummed fingers on his armrest. What's our strategic position? Terrible, sir. We're dependent on Republic goodwill for survival. Our weapons systems are operational but insufficient against their fleet. Dimensional drive is completely offline, even if we wanted to go home, we can't. And Dark Helmet has apparently been adopted by a small green Jedi Master who's teaching him patience. So basically, we're hostages calling it diplomacy. Succinct and accurate, sir. Skroob sighed. I hate this galaxy already. A communications officer called out, Mr. President, we're receiving transmission from the Separatist command ship. Count Dooku requests private channel. Sanders and Skroob exchanged glances. Put it through, Skroob ordered. Audio only. No need to show him our bridge layout. The holographic display activated, showing Count Dooku's elegant features in blue-white projection. His expression was carefully neutral, the look of a man making a business proposal rather than a threat. President Skroob. How gracious of you to accept my communication. Count Dooku. To what do I owe the pleasure? Pragmatism, Mr. President. I believe we can help each other. You already offered us aid. We chose the Republic. And they are providing basic necessities. Food. Water. Temporary life support assistance. Dooku's tone suggested these were trinkets. I offer something more substantial, permanent repair of your vessel. Access to our industrial capacity. And most importantly, he paused for effect. Independence. Explain. The Republic will help you survive. But they will also expect gratitude. Allegiance. Eventually, they will ask you to join their war. The Jedi Council will suggest, gently but firmly, that you owe them. And before you realize it, you're trapped in a conflict not of your making. It was, Skroob had to admit, a compelling argument. Whereas you want what, exactly, he asked. Information. Your dimensional breach technology. How it functions, how it might be replicated. In exchange, we repair your ship completely, provide navigational data for this galaxy, and guarantee your neutrality. You owe us nothing beyond the technical specifications. Sanders leaned close to Skroob, whispering, "It's a trap." Obviously it's a trap, Skroob whispered back. The question is whether we can spring it on them instead. To Dooku, he said aloud, "Interesting proposal. I'll need to consult with my staff. Give us 24 hours. Of course. I am, after all, a patient man." The transmission ended. Sanders immediately activated internal security protocols, ensuring the conversation hadn't been monitored by Republic listening devices. "Sir, we cannot trust the Separatists. Their leader is a Sith Lord, practitioners of the dark side. Everything we've learned about them suggests manipulation and betrayal." Agreed. But what if we feed them false information? Or partial data that seems valuable but actually isn't? You want to play both sides. I want to survive long enough to find a way home, Skroob corrected. If that means appearing cooperative with everyone while trusting no one, so be it. We didn't survive as long as we have by being honest. It was cynical, pragmatic, and exactly the kind of thinking that had kept planet Spaceball's dysfunctional government functioning despite overwhelming incompetence. Deep in Spaceball One's engineering deck, Chief Engineer Parsons showed the clone engineering team the atmospheric processing systems. What they saw made several of them visibly recoil. That's held together with magnetic tape," one clone said, horrified. "And optimism," Parsons added cheerfully. "Don't forget the optimism. This shouldn't work. By every principle of engineering, this should have catastrophically failed years ago. It did. Twice. We fixed it with what we had available. Magnetic tape isn't a structural repair solution. It is when you're out of actual repair materials and your leadership spent the maintenance budget on a second Death Star parody." The clone engineer stared at her. "You people are either geniuses or suicidally insane. Why not both?" Despite the horror, solutions emerged. Republic materials could reinforce the systems. Spaceball's ingenuity, born of desperation and chronic underfunding, could adapt those materials in ways Republic engineers would never have considered. It was collaboration through mutual necessity, and it was working. In the meditation chamber, Yoda guided the man formerly known only as Dark Helmet through basic force sensitivity exercises. Without the helmet's psychological barrier, something unexpected emerged, genuine talent. "Feel the force around you," Yoda instructed. Not the Schwartz. Not power to be wielded. Just, life. Energy. Connection. The man closed his eyes. Concentrated. And felt it, faint, distant, but real. The humming presence of the Force, underlying everything. It was nothing like the Schwartz's aggressive, ring-channeled power. This was subtle. Patient. Vast. I feel something, he admitted. Good. Very good. Sensitive to the Force, you are. Untrained, undisciplined, but sensitive. With proper teaching, powerful you could become. Really? But powerful and wise, different things they are. Power without wisdom. Dangerous. Many Sith learned this. Too late, they learned. The Sith are the bad guys, right? Bad? Good? Yoda's ears drooped. Simplistic labels, these are. Dark side users, Sith are. Power through passion, through anger, through dominance they seek. Leads to suffering, this path does. Always. The man who wore the helmet thought about his life. About compensation through volume and bluster. About claiming power he didn't truly understand. About trying to dominate because being anything less meant being dismissed. I think, he said slowly, I've been doing the Schwartz wrong. Perhaps, Yoda agreed. Or perhaps, doing it for wrong reasons, you were. Power as shield against feeling small. Recognize this, do you? Yeah. I recognize it. Then first lesson, learned you have, acknowledge truth about yourself. Harder than wielding any power, this is. Braver, too. For the first time in years, the man behind Dark Helmet's mask felt something unexpected, hope. Not hope for conquest or domination. Hope for being more than the character he'd created. Outside, the twin suns set over Christophilis, and the Clone Wars continued their grinding march. But inside Spaceball One, in moments stolen between survival and scheming, small transformations began. Some through engineering. Some through diplomacy. Some through meditation. All of them fragile. All of them necessary. And in orbit, Count Dooku watched and planned, knowing that chaos and desperation made the perfect breeding ground for manipulation. The next 18 hours transformed Spaceball One from dying vessel into functioning, if still damaged, warship. Clone engineers worked in shifts, their efficiency impressive even to the cynical Spaceballs crew. Atmospheric scrubbers were reinforced with Republic-grade materials. Oxygen recyclers received complete overhauls. Power distribution systems that had been held together with literal prayer and improvised wiring were rewired to actual safety standards. Chief Engineer Parsons watched this transformation with mixed feelings. Pride that her makeshift solutions had kept them alive this long. Embarrassment that actual competent engineers were quietly horrified by what they found. Gratitude that they were fixing it anyway. Your crew is very good, she told the clone engineering commander, a veteran designated Tech 7. We're trained for rapid field repairs under combat conditions, Tech 7 replied, not looking up from his diagnostic panel. Though I'll admit, I've never seen damage quite this creative. That's diplomatic. I'm trying to be professional. Internally, I'm screaming. Parsons laughed despite herself. Welcome to Spaceball Engineering. The screaming is traditional. But not everyone aboard Spaceball One was focused on repairs. In a converted storage bay that now served as command center, President Skroob held court with his inner circle. Colonel Sanders, Chief Engineer Parsons, and surprisingly, the man who'd removed his dark helmet. Without the massive helmet, he looked younger. Less imposing. His name, he'd admitted quietly to Yoda and only Yoda, was actually Rick. But here, among his own people, he still demanded the title. Some armor took time to fully remove. Status report, Skroob demanded. Sanders consulted his datapad. Life support now stable for approximately 6 weeks. Weapons systems operational at 70%. Engines functional for sublight travel but hyperdrive remains offline. The dimensional breach drive is, well, it's debris. Complete loss. So we're stuck here, Skroob stated flatly. Unless we can convince someone to transport us home. Which seems unlikely given we don't know how to navigate back to our dimension. Parsons added, the clone engineers are good, but they can't fix technology they don't understand. The dimensional drive worked on principles that barely made sense in our reality. Here, with their physics, we'd need to completely reinvent it from scratch. Dark Helmet. Rick, but he wasn't ready to be Rick yet, spoke up. What about the Schwartz? Master Yoda said it's related to their force. Maybe we can use that connection somehow. Everyone stared at him. What? He asked defensively. You're quoting the small green Jedi, Sanders said carefully. And suggesting we use mystical energy to solve an engineering problem. Are you feeling well? I'm feeling like maybe screaming about being the supreme ruler isn't getting us anywhere. Master Yoda says. Master Yoda? Skroob interrupted. You're calling him Master now? Dark Helmet's face flushed. He's earned the title. You haven't seen what he can do. The Force is, it's real power. Not like the Schwartz. Real, controlled, disciplined power. And he's teaching me to, he stopped, realizing he was being vulnerable in front of his own command staff. Old habits reasserted. Not that I need teaching. I'm just, learning their techniques to better conquer them. Right, Sanders said gently. Conquering them. Of course. Skroob waved this aside. Helmet's personal growth aside, we have strategic decisions to make. The Republic continues to help us. Count Dooku continues to offer better terms. And we're sitting on technology both sides want. How do we play this? Carefully, Parsons suggested. The moment either side thinks we're favoring the other, we become a target instead of an asset. Agreed. So we maintain neutrality. Accept aid from both if possible. Provide just enough information to seem cooperative without giving away anything critical. Dark Helmet frowned. But the Jedi are helping us out of genuine kindness. Doesn't that mean something? The room went quiet again. Sanders spoke carefully. Sir, are you suggesting we should trust the Jedi? Based on ethical considerations? I'm suggesting that Master Yoda spent 3 hours teaching me meditation techniques even though I was terrible at it and kept complaining. He didn't have to do that. He did it because he thought I could be better than I was. Dark Helmet's voice cracked slightly. Nobody's ever thought that before. President Skroob studied his self-proclaimed Dark Lord with new eyes. Yoda's influence was working faster than expected. This could be useful. Or catastrophically problematic. Noted, Skroob said neutrally. But kindness and strategy are different things. We appreciate the Jedi's help. We remain neutral in their war. Clear. Clear, Dark Helmet agreed reluctantly. Outside, in Christophilis' crystalline canyons, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi patrolled the perimeter. The Separatist forces had maintained their withdrawal, but neither Jedi trusted that to last. Count Dooku was planning something. The question was what? Master, do you think helping the Spaceballs is the right move? Anakin asked as they walked. Define right, Obi-Wan replied. Morally? Absolutely. They're stranded people in desperate need. Strategically? That's more complex. They have technology that could change the war. Dimensional breach capabilities, even if currently non-functional. That Schwartz power that works like the Force but isn't. Count Dooku wants that knowledge. As does the Republic, I'm sure. Chancellor Palpatine will be very interested in our reports. Something in Obi-Wan's tone made Anakin glance at him sharply. You sound suspicious. I sound cautious. There's a difference. Obi-Wan paused, choosing words carefully. The Chancellor has been very involved in military decisions lately. More than previous chancellors. It's concerning. He's trying to win the war. Or he's consolidating power. Anakin, I'm not suggesting anything treasonous. I'm simply noting patterns that trouble me. They continued walking in thoughtful silence until Anakin's comlink chirped. Skywalker here. General, this is Tech 7. We've completed the primary atmospheric repairs. Spaceball One is stable. But we found something during the dimensional drive analysis. You should see this. 10 minutes later, both Jedi stood in Spaceball One's engineering bay, staring at what remained of the dimensional breach drive. The device was wrecked, yes, but the underlying principles visible in its construction were fascinating and deeply troubling. This isn't technology, Obi-Wan said slowly. Or rather, it's not only technology. Tech 7 nodded. We found organic components integrated into the drive mechanism. Living tissue interfaced with mechanical systems. And these energy channeling crystals, he pointed to shattered fragments, they're force sensitive. Kyber crystals? Anakin asked. No. Similar resonance, but different structure. As if someone in their dimension discovered force-sensitive materials independently and built technology around them without understanding what they'd found. Obi-Wan picked up one of the fragments carefully. Even damaged, he felt it humming faintly with energy. This is how they accidentally breached dimensions. They built a hyperdrive enhanced with force-sensitive materials but had no framework to control or understand the interaction. Which means replicating it would require, Anakin's eyes widened. It would require Force users to operate. Or Schwartz users, Obi-Wan corrected. Which is the same thing, apparently, just channeled differently. The implications cascaded outward. This technology couldn't be mass-produced. Couldn't be weaponized by conventional military forces. It required force sensitivity to function. That changed everything about its strategic value. We need to tell the Council, Anakin said. Agreed. And we need to ensure this information doesn't fall into Separatist hands. But information, like water, finds its way through cracks. Aboard Count Dooku's command ship, a holographic projection showed schematics stolen from Republic communications, encrypted, yes, but Separatist slicers were very good. Dooku studied the dimensional drive analysis with cold interest. Force-sensitive technology, he murmured. How delightfully unexpected. His communication array activated. The hooded visage of Darth Sidious materialized, yellow eyes gleaming with dark curiosity. My lord, Dooku greeted. You have news regarding our dimensional visitors? Indeed. Their breach drive requires force sensitivity to function. Without it, the technology is merely exotic wreckage. But with proper application. Dooku let the implication hang. We could create weapons that transcend conventional limitations, Sidious finished. Dimensional strikes. Attacks from vectors that cannot be defended against. Useful. Very useful. There is a complication, my lord. The technology also requires living organic components. The Jedi will oppose any attempt to replicate it. The Jedi oppose many things. Their opposition becomes less relevant daily. Sidious's tone turned contemplative. This dark helmet. You said he possesses force sensitivity despite no training. The Schwartz is crude but functional. With proper Sith instruction, he could become a valuable asset. Or a liability. Unstable tools serve no one. Sidious paused. I want that technology, Lord Tyrannus. Acquire it. By negotiation if possible. By force if necessary. But acquire it. As you command, my lord. The transmission ended. Dooku stood alone in his chambers, mind already working through approaches. The Spaceballs would cooperate, voluntarily or otherwise. Their ship would become Separatist property. Their technology would advance the Sith's grand design. It was simply a matter of proper pressure applied at the right moment. Back in his meditation chamber, the man behind dark helmet sat in lotus position, attempting the breathing exercises Yoda had taught. Focus on the breath. Clear the mind. Feel the force flowing through and around. He lasted almost 5 minutes before frustration broke concentration. This is impossible, he burst out. Yoda, seated across from him, didn't even open his eyes. Impossible? No. Difficult? Yes. Different things, these are. How long did it take you to master this? Still mastering it, I am. 900 years, and learning still I do. 900 years? Patience, you lack. I'm starting to think you're deliberately making this difficult. Now Yoda opened his eyes, and in them danced something that might have been amusement. Making it difficult? No. Difficult it already is. Showing you this truth? Yes. Accept it, you must. The man who wore Dark Helmet's identity like armor took a shaky breath. Why are you helping me? Really? See potential, I do. Not in Schwartz. Not in power. In you. The person beneath the helmet. Frightened boy trying to be feared instead of fearful. Know this feeling, I do. Seen it in many Jedi. Seen it in Dooku, before he fell. I'm nothing like a Sith Lord. No. Yoda tilted his head. Seek power to compensate for fear. Check. Use volume to mask insecurity. Check. Create persona to hide vulnerability. Check. He paused. Different in degree, perhaps. But same path, same first steps. The truth of it hit harder than any physical blow. So what do I do? Already doing it, you are. Acknowledging fear. Sitting with discomfort. Learning that power without wisdom is just noise. Yoda's expression softened. Hard path, this is. Braver than conquest. Harder than domination. But better. Much better. Outside, stars wheeled overhead, and the galaxy continued its eternal dance of light and shadow. Inside Spaceball One, small transformations continued, some mechanical, some political, some deeply personal. None of them noticed the subtle repositioning of Separatist vessels in orbit. The slow, careful maneuvering that suggested preparation rather than withdrawal. Count Dooku was making his move. The attack came at dawn. Separatist warships dropped from high orbit with predatory precision, their formation suggesting careful planning rather than opportunistic strike. AAT tanks materialized from dropships in the crystal canyons, establishing firing positions that commanded the approaches to Spaceball One. Vulture droids screamed through Christophilis' atmosphere, their targeting computers locking onto Republic defensive emplacements. But they didn't fire. Not yet. Count Dooku's voice boomed across all frequencies, Republic, Separatist, and Spaceballs alike. His tone carried aristocratic authority that transcended faction lines. President Skroob. I am transmitting coordinates for a diplomatic meeting. Come alone, or bring advisors if you wish. But come within the hour, or my forces will demonstrate why the Separatist alliance has brought the Republic to its knees across 1,000 systems. In Spaceball One's command center, alarms shrieked. Crew members scrambled to battle stations with varying degrees of competence. President Skroob stared at tactical displays showing Separatist forces in overwhelming positions, and made the calculation every leader dreads: fight and die, or negotiate from weakness. Get me Master Kenobi, he ordered. And find Dark Helmet. We're going to need. I'm here, a voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. The man stood there without his massive helmet, wearing simplified Spaceballs armor that looked almost professional without the oversized headgear. His Schwartz ring glowed faintly on his finger, but the energy seemed controlled rather than wild. "You're not wearing your helmet," Colonel Sanders observed carefully. "Master Yoda says it was a crutch." "He's right." The man's voice carried new certainty. Not the bombastic false confidence of before, but something quieter and more dangerous. "Besides, I can actually see peripheral threats without it." Tactical advantage. "Who are you and what did you do with Dark Helmet?" Skroob asked. "I'm still Dark Helmet. Just, better at it." He approached the tactical display. Dooku's positioned his forces to maximize intimidation while minimizing actual risk. He's not planning an assault. This is a negotiation tactic. Sanders checked the force disposition and blinked. He's right. Those AATs are positioned for show. Their actual firing solutions are terrible. One competent return volley and they'd have to withdraw. Dooku doesn't want a fight, Dark Helmet continued. He wants leverage. He'll offer us something we need, probably complete ship repair and safe passage, in exchange for the dimensional drive technology. Skroob studied his transformed Dark Lord with new appreciation. 3 days with a Jedi and you've become tactically competent. Should I be worried? Probably. I'm certainly worried. Dark Helmet managed a slight smile. But Master Yoda taught me to see patterns instead of just reacting. The Force helps with that. Or the Schwartz. Still figuring out the difference. A clone trooper burst onto the command deck. "Sirs, Generals Kenobi and Skywalker request immediate audience. They're aware of the Separatist repositioning." "Send them in," Skroob ordered. The 2 Jedi entered with weapons undrawn but clearly ready. Obi-Wan's expression was carefully neutral, the look of a diplomat preparing for bad news. Anakin looked like he wanted to punch something, which was his default state during the Clone Wars. "President Skroob," Obi-Wan began, "Count Dooku's forces have us in a tactically precarious position. Not insurmountable, but engagement would be costly for all parties. I assume he's contacted you directly? Demanding a meeting within the hour. Standard Dooku methodology. Apply pressure, offer seemingly generous terms, insert poison clauses into the agreement." Obi-Wan's tone suggested personal experience. "The question is whether you're inclined to negotiate." "The question is whether we have a choice," Skroob corrected. "Our weapons are operational but we're outgunned 3-1. Your Republic forces could intervene, but that starts a battle that destroys my ship regardless of who wins." Anakin stepped forward. "We won't let Dooku take your technology. The dimensional drive, even destroyed, contains principles that could revolutionize warfare. In Separatist hands, it becomes a weapon of mass destruction. In anyone's hands," Dark Helmet interjected quietly. "That technology shouldn't exist. We built it by accident, using materials we didn't understand, following principles we couldn't control. It nearly killed us. It did kill 17 crew members during the initial breach." His voice carried weight of genuine loss. "I was there. I saw what happens when you punch holes in reality without knowing what you're doing." Everyone stared at him again. "What?" he asked, less defensively than before. "I can have character development. It's allowed." Obi-Wan's expression softened fractionally. "Master Yoda's influence, I presume. He's very persuasive. Especially when he uses that disappointed tone." "Yes, he is." Obi-Wan turned back to Skroob. "If you attend this meeting, I recommend bringing witnesses. Multiple perspectives make it harder for Dooku to manipulate the narrative. I volunteer to accompany you." "As do I," Anakin added. Dark Helmet raised his hand. "Me too. I want to meet this Dooku properly. Not while I was posturing like an idiot." "You're admitting you were posturing like an idiot?" Colonel Sanders asked, amazed. Self-awareness is the first step toward not being an idiot. Master Yoda's words, not mine. President Skroob made his decision. Fine. We go to this meeting. Sanders, you're in command while I'm gone. If shooting starts, prioritize crew evacuation over ship preservation. Understood, sir. And Colonel? If we're not back in 3 hours, assume we've been betrayed and do whatever you think best. That's a lot of discretionary authority, sir. You've earned it. Mostly by not being Helmet. I'm standing right here, Dark Helmet protested. I know. It's why I said it. The meeting location was a neutral zone, a crystalline plateau equidistant from Spaceball One, Republic positions, and Separatist lines. Count Dooku arrived first, descending from his solar sailor with theatrical grace. His crimson robes caught the morning light, transforming him into a figure of aristocratic menace. Battle droids established a perimeter, but maintained distance, a calculated show of strength without immediate threat. The Spaceball delegation arrived via Republic gunship, the contrast almost comedic. Obi-Wan Kenobi in dignified Jedi robes. Anakin Skywalker radiating barely controlled aggression. President Skroob in his garish official attire. And Dark Helmet, now just a man in simplified armor, carrying himself with newfound confidence that made him somehow more dangerous than his previous bluster. Dooku's eyebrow rose fractionally when he saw Dark Helmet's face. Ah! The Dark Lord emerges from his shell. How unexpectedly mature of you. Count Dooku, Dark Helmet replied evenly. I apologize for our previous encounter. I was operating under misapprehensions about what constituted actual power. Indeed. And what do you believe constitutes actual power now? Control. Discipline. Understanding when not to use it. Dark Helmet's Schwartz ring pulsed gently. You were right. I was performing parlor tricks. But I'm learning real techniques now. Dooku studied him with predatory interest. Master Yoda's influence. How curious. The ancient master takes on the most unlikely students. He turned to Obi-Wan. Does the council know you've been training potential force sensitives from other dimensions? Master Yoda trains whom he chooses, Obi-Wan replied smoothly. The council trusts his judgment. How very Jedi. Trust without oversight. Dooku gestured to a portable conference table that battle droids had assembled. Shall we discuss terms like civilized beings? Or do you prefer to trade threats until someone's pride demands violence? President Skroob sat first, establishing he wouldn't be intimidated. Let's hear your offer, Count. Dooku settled across from him with elegant precision. Simple terms. You provide complete technical specifications for your dimensional breach drive. How it was constructed, what materials were used, the theoretical principles underlying its function. In exchange, the Separatist Alliance provides complete repair of your vessel, safe escort to any system you choose, and substantial financial compensation. And what do you plan to do with that technology? Anakin demanded. Create strategic advantages, Dooku replied simply. The ability to strike from unexpected vectors. To move forces through dimensional space rather than conventional hyperspace. To bypass Republic defenses entirely. He smiled thinly. Standard military application of superior technology. You mean weapons that could destroy entire planets, Obi-Wan said quietly. If necessary. Though I find planetary destruction wasteful. Better to dominate than devastate. Dark Helmet spoke up, his voice carrying unexpected authority. The dimensional drive killed 17 of our people. It nearly tore our ship apart. We punched through reality using materials we didn't understand, and it almost destroyed us. What makes you think you can control it? Superior discipline. Better resources. Actual understanding of the Force rather than your crude Schwartz approximation. The Schwartz is the Force, Dark Helmet countered. Just channeled differently. And if you think arrogance makes you immune to consequences, you're the one performing parlor tricks. The temperature around the table dropped noticeably. Dooku's expression remained neutral, but power gathered around him like a coiled serpent. Careful, young man. You're addressing a Sith Lord. I'm addressing someone who thinks power means you get to skip the lessons. Dark Helmet didn't back down. Master Yoda spent 900 years learning the Force. 900 years. And he says he's still learning. You've had what, 60 years? 70. And you think you've mastered it enough to play with dimensional barriers? Obi-Wan placed a subtle hand on Anakin's arm, signaling him to stay quiet. This confrontation was significant beyond its immediate content. Dooku leaned forward. You've trained for 3 days and presume to lecture me? I've learned enough to know I know nothing. That's apparently more than you've learned in decades. The silence stretched. Then, impossibly, Dooku laughed, a short, genuine sound of surprised appreciation. Yoda taught you well. That particular rhetorical trap. Turning confidence into arrogance, then using humility as weapon, that's pure Yoda methodology. Dooku's smile was razor-sharp. But wisdom doesn't change strategic reality. I have overwhelming force. You have dying ship and borrowed Republic protection. So I ask again, will you negotiate, or shall I simply take what I want? President Skroob had been waiting for this moment. You can't take it, Count. Not really. Explain. The dimensional drive is destroyed. Even if you recovered every fragment, you'd have wreckage. The real value is knowledge, how it was built, what principles guided its construction. And that knowledge exists in exactly 3 places: our engineering team's heads, our ship's computer cores, and Chief Engineer Parsons's personal logs. Which I can extract through various means. Can you? Skroob's smile was cold. Our computer cores are biometrically locked. They'll auto-wipe if accessed improperly. Our engineering team has standing orders to destroy data if captured. And Chief Parsons has the entire technical readout memorized but won't share it under duress. Trust me, we've tried for budget audits. It was a bluff. Partially. Dooku studied Skroob's face, reading micro-expressions, body language, the small tells that revealed deception. He found uncertainty. Skroob believed what he was saying, but wasn't certain it would work. Good enough. I see, Dooku said slowly. So you force me to negotiate in good faith rather than simply seizing assets. We force you to recognize we're not helpless victims. We're incompetent, yes. Chaotic, absolutely. But we survived this long through stubborn refusal to die easily. Dooku's respect for these absurd people increased fractionally. Very well. Modified terms, partial technical specifications in exchange for life support repairs and military non-aggression. You keep your secrets. We keep you alive. And the Republic? Obi-Wan asked. Remains free to maintain their charitable aid. I'm not interested in fighting them over temporary allies. Dooku's tone made clear the Spaceballs' value was technological, not military. Dark Helmet looked to President Skroob, and in that glance past silent communication, your call. But I don't trust him. Skroob nodded fractionally, neither do I. But we need time. We'll consider your offer, Skroob said aloud. Give us 12 hours. 6, Dooku countered. 12, or we start destroying data cores out of spite. Another pause. Another assessment. Another fractional increase in respect. 12 hours, Dooku agreed. After which, we resume previous postures. He stood smoothly. I look forward to your response, President Skroob. And Dark Helmet, continue your studies. Perhaps one day you'll be worth fighting properly. It wasn't quite a compliment. But it wasn't dismissal either. As the Separatist delegation withdrew, Anakin muttered to Obi-Wan, "Did that just go well or terribly?" "Yes," Obi-Wan replied. "Definitely yes." The 12-hour countdown began with both sides maneuvering for position, military, political, and moral. Aboard Spaceball One, President Skroob convened an emergency council in the main conference room, now reinforced with Republic-supplied structural supports that made it slightly less likely to collapse under stress. Present were Colonel Sanders, Chief Engineer Parsons, the man formerly known only as Dark Helmet, and via holographic projection, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Yoda. Anakin Skywalker stood guard outside, his presence both security and statement. "Options," Skroob demanded without preamble. "Give me realistic options." Sanders spoke first. "Military, we can't win a direct engagement. Dooku has 3 capital ships, multiple support craft, and enough battle droids to overwhelm our defenses. The Republic could intervene, but that starts the larger battle we've been trying to avoid." "Political?" Skroob asked. "Play both sides," Parsons suggested. "Give the Separatists partial data, enough to seem cooperative but not enough to actually replicate the dimensional drive. Give the Republic the same thing but different sections. Keep both factions dependent on us for complete picture." "That's incredibly dangerous," Obi-Wan's hologram noted. "Once either side realizes you're playing them, you become expendable rather than valuable." Dark Helmet had been quiet, sitting in meditation pose that looked increasingly natural on him. Now he opened his eyes. "There's a third option. Destroy all the data. Completely. Make the dimensional drive technology unrecoverable by anyone." Everyone stared at him. "Hear me out," he continued. "That technology nearly killed us. It did kill 17 crew members. It's built on principles we barely understand using force-sensitive materials we can't control. What happens when the Separatists try to weaponize it? Or the Republic? Or anyone?" He leaned forward. "We got lucky once, punching through dimensions and surviving. The next people won't be lucky. They'll tear holes in reality, destabilize dimensional barriers, maybe destroy entire sectors of space. For what? Military advantage?" President Skroob studied his transformed Dark Lord. "You're suggesting we deliberately make ourselves strategically worthless?" "I'm suggesting we prevent galactic-scale catastrophe. Master Yoda says the Force has will, that it guides events toward balance. Maybe we crashed here specifically to stop this technology from spreading." Yoda's holographic ears perked up with interest. Philosophical growth, I see. But practical question remains, destroy data, you say. How? And what then? Dooku and Republic both still want technology. Both still pressure you. Then we run, Dark Helmet said simply. We fix what we can, load everyone aboard, and find somewhere in this galaxy to disappear. We're nobody here. No faction allegiance. No political entanglements. We could just vanish. Except we can't get home, Parsons reminded him. The dimensional drive is irreparable. Even if we wanted to return to our galaxy, we can't. Then we make a new home here. Is that really worse than being torn apart by Sith Lords and Republic bureaucrats fighting over our corpses? The brutal honesty silenced the room. Colonel Sanders broke it. He's not wrong. Our strategic value is temporary. Eventually, both sides will decide killing us and seizing wreckage is easier than continued negotiation. We're only alive because we're currently more useful intact. That's a depressing but accurate assessment, Skroob admitted. Obi-Wan's hologram shifted, his expression thoughtful. If you chose to disappear, the Jedi Order could assist. We have contacts in the Outer Rim, planets beyond Republic or Separatist control where a crew of 2,000 could integrate relatively unnoticed. You'd help us hide? Skroob asked, surprised. Even though it means losing access to the dimensional technology? The technology frightens me, Obi-Wan said honestly. I've seen what happens when power exceeds wisdom. The Separatists would absolutely weaponize dimensional breach capabilities. The Republic, he paused delicately, would also likely weaponize it, albeit with better public relations. Neither outcome serves the Force's balance. Yoda nodded sagely. Agree, I do. This technology, dangerous it is. Better lost than found. Help you vanish, we will. But decision, yours it must be. President Skroob looked around the table. His command staff. His people. Incompetent, chaotic, absurd, but his. Vote, he said quietly. All in favor of destroying the data and running? Dark Helmet's hand went up immediately. Parsons followed after only brief hesitation. Sanders took longer, calculating odds and outcomes, before finally raising his hand. 3 votes. All that remained was Skroob himself. He thought about planet Spaceball, corrupt, polluted, ruled by incompetence and greed. Thought about Dark Helmet's transformation from posturing fool to someone capable of genuine wisdom. Thought about 17 crew members who died because they played with forces beyond their understanding. His hand rose. Unanimous, he said. We destroy the data. All of it. Parsons, how long to completely purge the computer cores and engineering files? 6 hours if we're thorough. 8 if we want to make recovery absolutely impossible through any means. Make it impossible. Sanders, prepare crew for emergency evacuation procedures. If this goes wrong, I want everyone ready to abandon ship within 20 minutes. Understood, sir. Dark Helmet, Skroob stopped. What's your actual name? Your real name? The man hesitated. Old identity warring with new. Finally, Rick. My name is Rick. Rick. I need you to do something very difficult. What? Contact Master Yoda. Learn everything you can about hiding Force signatures. If Dooku or other Sith can sense Force-sensitive technology, we need to mask every fragment of the dimensional drive before we run. Rick, not quite comfortable with the name yet, but getting there, nodded. I can do that. The Force can conceal as well as reveal. Master Yoda's been teaching me basic techniques. Good. You have 6 hours. The meeting dissolved into focused activity. Engineers began systematic data purges. Crew members packed essentials. And Rick retreated to his meditation chamber, reaching out through the Force, the Schwartz, whatever it was called, toward the small green master who'd shown him what real power looked like. Across the crystalline battlefield, in the Republic command post, Master Yoda felt the contact and smiled. The boy was learning. Not just techniques, but wisdom. Rare, that was. Precious. Guide you, I will, Yoda sent back through the Force. Hide what must be hidden, we shall. Trust in the Force. Trust in yourself. Rick felt the ancient presence supporting him, and something inside, something that had always hidden behind oversized helmets and loud proclamations, finally began to believe it might be enough. But in orbit, aboard Count Dooku's command ship, the Sith Lord felt the Force shifting. Patterns changing. Something was happening aboard that ridiculous vessel, and whatever it was threatened his plans. Increase surveillance, Dooku ordered his tactical officer. Full sensor sweeps. Monitor all transmissions, encrypted or otherwise. And prepare boarding parties. If the Spaceballs are planning something foolish, I want immediate response capability. Yes, my lord. Dooku contacted his master, the hologram of Darth Sidious materializing in shimmering blue. My lord, Dooku greeted. The situation is evolving. I believe the Spaceballs are preparing to destroy their technology rather than share it. How unexpectedly principled of them. Sidious's tone suggested this was problematic rather than admirable. Can you prevent this? Yes. But it requires direct action. Boarding teams, aggressive negotiation. The Jedi will interfere. Undoubtedly. Which means engaging them directly. The battle we've been avoiding becomes inevitable. Sidious was silent for long moments, yellow eyes gleaming with calculation. Do it. Secure that technology. If the Jedi wish to protect incompetent fools, let them bleed for the privilege. And Lord Tyrannus? Yes, my lord. This Rick. The one who removed his helmet. He shows genuine force potential. If opportunity presents, take him alive. Raw talent properly directed could serve our purposes. As you command, my lord. The transmission ended. Dooku stood alone in his chambers, lightsaber hilt resting in his palm, feeling its familiar weight. He had tried diplomacy. Time for more direct methods. Assemble the boarding teams, he ordered. We move within the hour. Aboard Spaceball One, alarms began shrieking as sensors detected Separatist drop ships launching from capital ships. Dozens of them, carrying hundreds of battle droids and elite commando units. The countdown had run out early. President Skroob's voice boomed across ship-wide intercom, all hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. Republic forces, we require immediate assistance. Engineering, status on data purge. Parsons's voice crackled back, 70% complete. We need another 90 minutes. We don't have 90 minutes. Finish it now or dump the cores entirely. Dumping the cores means losing navigation, life support regulation, weapons targeting. Do it. In his meditation chamber, Rick felt the attack coming through the force like approaching thunder. He reached out, sensing battle droid's mechanical emptiness, the cold dark side presence of Dooku, the Republic forces scrambling to respond. And something else. A presence vast and terrible, watching from Coruscant. Yellow eyes behind a mask of civility. Darth Sidious himself, observing events with predatory interest. Rick opened his eyes. His Schwartz ring blazed with golden light as he stood, muscle memory and Yoda's training combining into something new. He wasn't Dark Helmet anymore. Wasn't trying to be feared. He was just Rick. And that, somehow, felt more dangerous. Master Yoda, he whispered, knowing the ancient Jedi would hear through the Force. I think I'm about to do something very stupid or very brave. Possibly both. Same thing, they often are, Yoda's presence replied warmly. Trust yourself. Trust the Force. And Rick? Yes, Master. The helmet. Leave it behind. Need it, you do not. Rick looked at the massive black helmet resting on its pedestal. The armor he'd worn for years. The shield against feeling small. He left it behind and walked toward battle. The Battle of Spaceball One began with calculated Separatist precision meeting desperate improvisation. Drop ships hammered through Christophilis' atmosphere, disgorging battle droids in waves that crashed against hastily erected Spaceballs' defensive positions. Clone troopers responded with professional efficiency, establishing crossfire lanes among the crystal formations. And caught between escalating violence, the massive crashed vessel became fortress, prize, and tomb all at once. Rick emerged from Spaceball One's main hangar onto the crystalline battlefield, and the Force sang through him with clarity he'd never experienced. Without the helmet's psychological barrier, without the persona of Dark Helmet weighing him down, he felt everything. The clone's disciplined courage, the droid's empty mechanical purpose, the crystalline planet's ancient patience, and beneath it all, Dooku's cold dark side presence approaching like winter wind. There, AB-1 battle droid pointed. That's the Force sensitive. Target him. Blaster fire screamed toward Rick. He raised his hand instinctively, Schwartz ring blazing, and the bolts froze in midair, hanging suspended in golden energy fields before dropping harmlessly to the ground. The technique was pure instinct, the Force guiding his actions beyond conscious thought. Wizard, a clone trooper muttered appreciatively before returning fire. Rick didn't wait for the next volley. He moved forward, not running but walking with purpose, his Schwartz creating protective barriers that deflected incoming fire. He wasn't trying to kill, wasn't even trying to fight, really. He was buying time. Every second Separatist forces focused on him was a second Chief Engineer Parsons had to complete the data purge. A destroyer droid rolled into position, shields activating, twin blasters preparing to unleash devastating firepower. Rick extended both hands and felt the Force respond. The droid lifted off the ground, shields flickering in confusion as their programming couldn't account for levitation. Rick held it suspended for 3 seconds, then gently placed it down 20 meters away, upside down, legs flailing uselessly. Did he just relocate a destroyer droid? Colonel Sanders asked from his command post, watching through tactical displays. Without destroying it, President Skroob confirmed, equally amazed. He's fighting without killing. Very Jedi of him. Or very Rick. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker fought their way toward Spaceball One's position, lightsabers carving blue arcs through battle droid ranks. They'd seen Rick's display and recognized Yoda's influence immediately, the gentle control, the minimum necessary force, the emphasis on protection over destruction. The student learns quickly, Obi-Wan observed, deflecting blaster fire. Too quickly, Anakin replied, concerned. 3 days of training shouldn't produce that level of control. Unless he was always Force-sensitive and simply never had proper framework to channel it. The Schwartz was crude approximation. Now with actual teaching, Obi-Wan parried a vibroblade strike from a commando droid. He's actualizing latent potential. Is that going to be a problem? Depends on whether Dooku decides he wants that potential for himself. As if summoned by mention, Count Dooku's solar sailor descended through the chaos, landing with aristocratic precision amid the battle. The Sith Lord emerged, crimson lightsaber igniting, and the fighting around him simply stopped. Clone troopers held fire. Battle droids awaited orders. Even the planet's twin suns seemed to dim in acknowledgement of the dark side's presence. Dooku's gaze swept across the battlefield until it found Rick. There you are. The student without his helmet. How symbolic. Rick stopped walking. Around him, golden Schwartz energy swirled like protective flames. Count Dooku. Come to take what isn't yours. Come to claim what you're foolishly trying to destroy. Dooku began walking toward him, each step measured and deliberate. You think erasing data cores makes that technology disappear? The principles exist in your mind, in your engineer's understanding. I can extract that knowledge through various means. Painful means, admittedly, but effective. You could try. Rick's voice remained steady despite fear churning his stomach. But Master Yoda taught me something interesting about the Force. It protects those who serve balance rather than domination. Yoda fills your head with platitudes while I offer power. Which do you think serves you better? The one that doesn't require becoming a monster. Dooku smiled thinly. We're all monsters, boy. Some of us simply admit it. The Sith Lord moved with blinding speed, closing 30 meters in seconds, lightsaber arcing toward Rick's neck in execution strike. Rick raised his hands, Schwartz ring blazing, and caught the plasma blade in a field of golden energy. The lightsaber hissed and sparked against the barrier, held centimeters from flesh, while both men strained against each other's power. Impressive, Dooku acknowledged, pressing harder. But crude. Your Schwartz lacks refinement. Don't need refinement. Just need to hold you long enough. For what? Rick smiled. For them. Obi-Wan and Anakin hit Dooku from both flanks, lightsabers moving in perfect coordination. The Sith Lord disengaged from Rick, spinning to parry both Jedi simultaneously with elegant economy of motion. His Makashi form, refined, precise, deadly, turned 2-on-1 combat into deadly dance. But now it was 3 opponents. Rick circled, looking for openings, his Schwartz-enhanced perception showing him the battle's flow. He wasn't Dooku's equal in skill. Wasn't close. But he could disrupt, distract, create fractional advantages for the Jedi to exploit. Dooku recognized the strategy immediately. Using yourself as bait. How selfless. How Jedi. How ultimately futile. He unleashed force lightning from his free hand, the dark energy crackling toward Rick. Rick caught it in his Schwartz barrier. The lightning and golden energy collided in spectacular fashion, creating feedback that made nearby crystals resonate with harmonic frequencies. Pain lanced through Rick's arm, but he held the barrier, gritting his teeth. The dark side offers power without limits. Dooku declared, intensifying the lightning. The Schwartz is pale imitation. Embrace true power. Already tried that approach, Rick gasped out. Spent years pretending to be powerful. This is better. This is real. The lightning cut off abruptly as Anakin pressed his attack, forcing Dooku into pure defense. The Count's expression showed calculation rather than concern. He was testing them, learning their patterns, preparing devastating counter. It came moments later. Dooku feinted toward Obi-Wan, drew Anakin's aggressive response, then pivoted with supernatural speed to deliver brutal force push that sent the younger Jedi flying 20 meters into a crystal formation. Obi-Wan adjusted instantly, but Dooku's lightsaber found the opening, scoring a glancing blow across the Jedi Master's shoulder that made him stagger. Rick moved without thinking. His Schwartz ring erupted with energy that slammed into Dooku like physical force, driving the Sith Lord back 3 steps. It wasn't elegant. Wasn't controlled. Just raw power fueled by desperation and the need to protect. Dooku recovered quickly, but his eyes held new respect. You care about them. The Jedi. Your crew. That's your weakness. Or my strength, Rick countered. We'll test that theory. Dooku raised both hands, and the Force answered with terrible purpose. Not lightning. Not push. Something worse. The very air around Rick began compressing, creating an invisible sphere of pressure that squeezed from all directions. Ribs creaked. Vision tunneled. Rick fell to his knees, Schwartz barrier flickering as oxygen deprivation robbed him of concentration. Stop! Obi-Wan shouted, clutching his wounded shoulder. This accomplishes nothing. It accomplishes demonstrating reality, Dooku replied coldly. Your student dies unless you surrender access to Spaceball One. Simple transaction. Anakin struggled to his feet, fury radiating from him. You're going to murder someone who can't defend themselves. I'm executing tactical leverage. Very different. The pressure increased. Rick's consciousness began fading, golden energy guttering like candle in storm. He reached out through the Force, the Schwartz, whatever name it carried, searching for anything that could help. And found it. The kyber-like crystals fragments scattered across the battlefield. Force-sensitive materials from their destroyed dimensional drive, enhanced by Christophilis' natural crystal formations. Rick connected to them instinctively, desperately, channeling the Schwartz through planetary geology itself. The ground erupted. Crystal spires burst upward between Rick and Dooku, breaking the compression sphere, creating barrier of force-resonant stone that hummed with power. The Sith Lord stepped back, genuinely surprised for the first time. What? The Schwartz isn't just personal power, Rick gasped, climbing to his feet. Its connection. To materials, to environment, to the Force flowing through everything. You focus on domination. I learned to work with. It wasn't completely true. Rick barely understood what he'd just done, but it sounded good and bought precious seconds. On Spaceball One's bridge, Chief Engineer Parsons's voice crackled over comms, data purge complete. All technical specifications erased. Computer cores wiped. The dimensional drive technology is gone. President Skroob's triumphant shout echoed, "All hands, abandon ship protocols. Load transports. We're leaving." Dooku heard this and his expression went absolutely cold. "You destroyed it. You actually destroyed it." "Told you we would," Rick said. "Then you've outlived your usefulness." The Sith Lord attacked with lethal intent, no longer testing, no longer playing. His lightsaber became crimson blur, Makashi precision turned to killing art. Rick backpedaled desperately, Schwartz barriers forming and shattering under relentless assault. He wasn't skilled enough for this. Wasn't trained enough. But he wasn't alone. Master Yoda arrived. The ancient Jedi Master simply appeared. Moving so fast his form blurred, positioning himself between Rick and Dooku's death strike. Yoda's green lightsaber caught the crimson blade with perfect economy, and suddenly the battlefield center of gravity shifted. "Enough, this is," Yoda said quietly. "Master Yoda." Dooku's voice carried complicated emotions, respect, resentment, old affection turned bitter. "Still protecting the unworthy, I see. Worthy, he is. More worthy than you remember being." Yoda's blade held steady against Dooku's, 800 years of experience against mere decades. "Walk away, Dooku. Technology gone, it is. Battle lost, you have. I've lost nothing. I simply adjust objectives." Dooku's free hand moved in subtle gesture. In orbit, Separatist capital ships' weapons powered up, targeting solutions locking onto Spaceball One's hull. The message was clear: if he couldn't have the technology, neither could anyone else. "You'll destroy them?" Obi-Wan asked, horrified. 2,000 civilians. "Loose ends, Master Kenobi. The Sith do not leave them. The Sith also do not murder defenseless refugees." Anakin shouted. "Watch me." Rick felt it then, felt Dooku's dark side presence reaching across distance, preparing to give the order that would rain plasma fire down on his crew, his friends, President Skroob and Colonel Sanders and Chief Engineer Parsons and 2,000 others who'd followed him across dimensions. And something inside Rick broke. Not broke toward darkness. Broke toward light. Toward absolute clarity of purpose. Toward willingness to sacrifice everything for those he'd learned to care about. His Schwartz ring erupted with power that dwarfed anything he'd previously channeled. Golden energy fountained upward, connecting to Christophilis's planetary crystal network, creating web of force-resonant power that encompassed the entire battlefield. Rick rose into the air, lifted by energies he barely controlled, and his voice boomed with authority that surprised even himself. "No." The word carried power. Carried will. Carried the Schwartz and the force and stubborn refusal to let his people die channeled into single syllable of absolute denial. And somehow, impossibly, it worked. The Separatist targeting computers flickered. Reset. Lost their locks. Something in Rick's force presence, amplified by planetary crystals and desperate love, interfered with electronic systems across orbital range, creating cascading failures that scrambled weapons arrays. Dooku stared upward at Rick's suspended form, and for the first time, showed genuine alarm. "That's not possible. That level of force manipulation requires caring about something more than power," Yoda finished. "Lesson you never learned." The Jedi Master's lightsaber moved in strike that forced Dooku back, breaking his concentration. Clone troopers pressed their advantage. Battle droids, confused by conflicting orders from scrambled orbital commands, began friendly fire incidents. And above it all, Rick hung suspended in golden light, buying time with power he didn't understand for people he'd learned to love. Spaceball One's emergency transports launched, carrying crew toward Republic vessels offering asylum. President Skroob watched his ship, his absurd, dying, beloved ship, fall behind, and felt something unexpected: hope. They'd survived. Against Sith Lords and impossible odds and their own incompetence, they'd survived. Count Dooku recognized defeat. Not total defeat. The war continued, his master's plans proceeded, but this battle, this objective, was lost. Withdraw, he ordered his forces coldly. All units, retreat to orbital positions. As Separatist forces pulled back, Rick descended slowly, golden energy fading, exhaustion hitting him like physical blow. He collapsed, but Yoda was there, small three-fingered hand steadying him. Did it work? Rick asked weakly. Worked, it did. Saved them, you have. Proud, I am. I don't even know what I did. Love, you did. Powerful thing, that is. More powerful than fear, than anger, than domination. Yoda's ancient eyes gleamed with warmth. True Jedi, you could become. Or true whatever you wish to be. Difference matters not. Heart in right place, you have. Rick managed a weak smile. I'm still keeping the title Dark Helmet. Earned it now. Just, using it differently. Good name, it is. Wear it with wisdom. As the battle's dust settled and the twin suns set over Christophilis, the survivors gathered. Republic transports prepared to carry Spaceball refugees to neutral systems in the Outer Rim where new lives could begin. The crew that had crossed dimensions, crashed on alien world, and somehow survived Sith Lords through sheer stubborn refusal to die. President Skroob stood with Colonel Sanders, watching Spaceball One's hulk cooling in the evening air. We're really leaving it behind? It's dead weight, sir. And a target. Better to scatter, integrate into this galaxy, start fresh. Never thought I'd say this, but I'm going to miss that stupid ship. Me too, sir. Me too. Rick, dark helmet in spirit if not appearance, sat with Master Yoda, learning meditation techniques that would help him control the power he'd discovered. Around them, clone troopers and Spaceballs crew members shared rations and stories, momentary peace amid endless war. And in orbit, aboard his retreating command vessel, Count Dooku contacted his master one final time. The technology is lost, my lord. Destroyed beyond recovery. Darth Sidious's hologram showed no anger. Only calculation. But the principle remains. Force-sensitive materials, dimensional resonance, the interaction between organic and technological. Useful information. And the Force-sensitive? This Rick? Let him go. For now. He'll serve better purpose remaining free, a loose thread the Jedi must monitor, distracting them from our true work. Sidious's smile was cold. The Clone Wars proceed according to plan. This was merely, educational interlude. As you command, my lord. The transmission ended. And across the galaxy, schemes within schemes continued their terrible unfolding. But on Christophilis, under alien stars, 2,000 refugees found hope. Sometimes, that was enough. The Spaceballs scattered across the Outer Rim like seeds on stellar wind, small groups integrating into frontier worlds where questions weren't asked and pasts could be reinvented. President Skroob found surprising success as a trade negotiator on Ord Mantell. Colonel Sanders became security consultant for a mining operation on Lothal. Chief Engineer Parsons revolutionized moisture farming technology on Tatooine using principles she swore she'd completely forgotten. And Rick, dark helmet in name, Jedi in spirit, Schwartz wielder in practice. Traveled between scattered crew members, maintaining connections, offering protection, growing steadily in wisdom and power under Master Yoda's remote guidance. He never wore the helmet again. Didn't need to. The name carried different weight now, not compensation for insecurity, but reminder of journey from fool to something approaching wisdom. The dimensional drive technology remained lost, its secrets erased from computer cores and scattered across memories that time would fade. Some knowledge, Yoda had taught, was better forgotten. Some power better left unwielded. The Clone Wars ground onward, consuming worlds and lives in conflict whose true architects remained hidden. But in quiet corners of the galaxy, refugees from another dimension proved that even the most incompetent could become heroes when circumstances demanded and wisdom offered guidance. Dark Helmet's legend grew in whispered stories. The Force wielder from beyond the stars who'd faced a Sith Lord and survived. Who'd sacrificed power for principle. Who'd learned that true strength came not from domination, but from protecting those who depended on you. It wasn't the conquest he'd originally imagined. But it was better. So much better. And somewhere in the Force, the Schwartz, the vast energy field connecting all living things, Master Yoda smiled, knowing that even the most unlikely student could find their way home.